Hello and welcome to Stalwarts of Music with Aditya Veera Season 2. Today's podcast partner, Perpetual Bus Experiences, are an artist representation company with three very basic but lofty goals. They're the launchpad for artists, helping them leverage success in the best possible manner. They also help fund social causes and make sure that people have a great time throughout the process. So be sure to check them out on www.perpetualbus.com. Today's guest is none other than the legendary bass virtuoso Rhonda Smith. She hails from Halifax, and she has forged a groundbreaking career spanning for more than 2 decades. With a rich musical lineage, Rhonda's mastery of the bass and lyrical sophistication has redefined genres like smooth jazz, funk, and electrified funk and rock. She specialized in jazz performance at the McGill University, and she conquered the male-dominated rock scene, earning respect and admiration. Notably, Rhonda has earned a Juno Award and collaborated with Canadian luminaires like Claude Dubois and Daniel Lavoie. Her fateful encounter with Sheila E. led to an illustrious tenure with Prince, contributing to his iconic Emancipation album. Her stardom continued to rise in the US, gracing stages with Shaka Khan, Beyonce, and Erykah Badu, among several others. She mesmerizes audiences worldwide, touring with the guitar legend Jeff Beck. Rhonda Smith stands as a musical anomaly, leaving an indelible mark on the industry with her unparalleled talent, vision, and tireless work ethic. So without any further ado, I'm delighted to welcome my guest for today, Rhonda Smith.
Hey, this is Rhonda Smith, and you're listening to Stalwarts of Music with Aditya Veera.
Hi, Rhonda. Namaste. Welcome to Stalwarts of Music with Aditya Veera. It's such a privilege to have you on the show.
Aditya, such a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I couldn't be more excited from making this happen. We've been talking for a while, and I'm so glad that you made time. And where are you? What's going on behind you? I see very beautiful landscape.
I'm in sunny California, Southern California. So, it's
Uh-huh.
always bright and beautiful here, and it's been really hot this week, even though we're
Mhm.
in September now, but it was 90 degrees today. So it's pretty hot, but
And
beautiful.
and what's going on in terms of music? What are you up to?
Oh, writing new music,
Mm-hmm.
practicing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the same old, playing bass. Normally
Okay.
I would be taping the Jimmy Kimmel show right now in
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood, Jimmy Kimmel
Mm-hmm.
Live, but right now we're in the midst of the Writers Guild of America strikes
Mm-hmm.
and SAG-AFTRA strikes, so we're not
Oh.
filming it.
And, and
Yeah.
and when are things likely to get better in terms of that?
It's really hard to say. This has been the
Mm.
longest strike
Mm.
in history, I think, for the WGA.
Okay.
So it's very difficult to say, and I'm certainly not in a position to say. But it's been very long already. It started in May, so it's
Oh
been
wow,
it's been
that's
pretty.
been quite some time. And what do you think is going to be the outcome of the strike?
I think inevitably, with a lot of pain, it's going to be resolved in the end because I think it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and mainly, I think the issues right now are with artificial intelligence and AI.
Okay.
Um, but I think that sooner or later they're going to have to come to the table. And with streaming, obviously, too, is an issue. Streaming is an issue for everyone.
Okay.
Um, but obviously they're going to have to come to the table at some point. I don't know if it's going to be next month, this month,
Mm-hmm.
next year. It's difficult to say.
So is this a certain community of musicians who have come together on this? I'd like to know a little more as to
Well, this,
yeah.
you know, streaming in the music industry has been an issue for a long time, and I've always said that I don't think that musicians have as the same representation or the
Mm.
best representation maybe in our unions. I think that probably SAG-AFTRA, which is the actors in America, and
Okay.
the WGA, which is the Writers Guild of America, America. These are people who put shows together and write for shows, and the actors are getting better representation right now in terms of where they feel streaming is taking advantage and they're not being paid properly. And same thing with the writers and where they feel AI is happening. So that's what's going on right now. But this has been an issue for music for many, many years. And
Sure.
probably
Yeah.
the majority of us musicians, writers, and artists and people who make music
Mm-hmm.
have wished that our unions came out and said, we're not going to write anymore, or Spotify or Amazon or whoever, Rhapsody, can't take our music and pay me a tenth of a penny per stream. It's just unfair when those CEOs are getting millions of dollars in bonuses every year. It's just it's devastated our industry. So what I was saying in that is that it's unfortunate that we as musicians, writers, and music writers don't have the same representation years ago, because this has been happening for years.
Yeah.
These minimal payments when there's money in it, but we're just not getting it. So that's what the strikes are. They're about a lot of things, but I think from what I've read that the AMTPT has given the writers certain things that they asked for, but I think that the main points right now are about streaming and AI, intelligence, and the rights that they feel shouldn't be used.
Well, I hope the outcome of this results to something good, because it's high time they address some of these issues in terms of, paying the artists nominally in terms of, their artistry. And it is something that can never be taken for granted. And I think the time has come for them to answer. So I hope things turn out and shape in the favor of artists. Hoping for the best.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so too for artists. I'm sure that in time it will for writers, and SAG-AFTRA will probably end up agreeing, Lord knows when, but at some point, to an agreement. But we'll see what happens for artists. That's a whole nother set of marbles,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. I'd like to start this interview by taking you down memory lane. So you were born in a family where all of your siblings played music. Your oldest brother played the trombone, I presume, and your sister played the clarinet, and your other brother picked up a bass for himself, and that was something that really caught your attention. So what were the first peak of cataclysmic gratifications that you got while playing this particular instrument?
I just like looking at it, Aditya, at first when I was really young. I liked the wood. I liked the smell of it.
Okay.
I liked everything. Kind of bonded with my body. And I think at that age, I didn't like a lot of things that I wasn't really attached to, but I was attached to the bass for whatever reason. And I was attached to the bass because my brother, who was 15 months older than me, is 15 months older than me. And I was very competitive with him at the time because we were the two youngest in the family. So it was kind of like anything that he did, I wanted to do because I thought it was interesting. And I thought it was cooler than playing trombone or clarinet. So that's kind of how it started for me. And being able to play in little garage bands with my little friends really helped, making a lot of noise and just feeling it out and just doing what I wanted to do, no boundaries.
Lovely. How does the emotional and personal connection you feel while trying to make music contribute to your creative process, and in terms of expressing yourself, expressing the inner feelings within you through this particular instrument happen?
Well, I think it gets better with time, because I think that feel, emotion, and all of that, the more that anybody plays, or I guess I would speak for myself, the more that I play, the more emotional I get, the more feel I have, the more at one I feel that I am with the instrument. I've always said, even when I was younger, when I would take breaks at times, that I felt that it's an extension of my body, the bass for me. It's a very foundational instrument.
Yeah.
At times it can be very complex. At times it can be very simplistic.
Mm.
Um, and the foundational part for me, being like Mother Earth, is what I like. I like strong foundations, and it was just an instrument that I was able to express myself. I'd say emotionally and physically, both ways around.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and some days it just makes me feel great. Sometimes, and there's sometimes when I'm not sure, and when I have a great performance or play with some people that I really love what we're doing, and it really gives me a feeling that nothing else can give me. I think
Yeah.
it's very unique.
Right. You did mention about the emotional aspect, and I'm sure there's like an ethical framework attached to it too. So, to what degree does the moral or ethical framework determine how good a musician one can be?
Well, I want to understand your question. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I think I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah,
I don't want to go.
certainly, certainly. So I would like to understand how important is a moral and ethical framework uh, for in order to determine how good a musician, in order to evaluate the artistry within you, is what I'd like to understand.
How does it has well, you know, I I think that's a very individual question.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
where music comes in or an instrument, it kind of really doesn't have to do with that. I
Mm.
think it's an individual thing, and what it brings to you is really what it's all about. It can kind of bring the same maybe inside satisfaction to somebody who is not a great player, or somebody who's just started, or somebody who's not
Yeah,
um, as proficient as somebody who's a pro. I never like to use the word master,
yeah,
because some people do, but I think that when you say you've mastered something or you go that far, you might possibly psychologically limit yourself at that point. Music is a black hole, no
yeah.
matter what instrument you play. It's a constant learning process if you want it to be.
Mm.
Um, the cool thing about it, you can always find something new that you can learn. Um, so it depends on the individual, but I think it's about what it gives you. It's about what it gives you more, I think, than how prolific you are or how great you are on it. There's different levels at that all the time, but I think it's a very individual thing. You know, for me, I've had satisfaction from it um, on all levels of my life. When I first started,
Mm.
uh, playing in wedding bands, when I was playing in dive bars, or if I was playing in front of 100,000 people, or with super artists who are doing the Grammys or whatever. I think it's a very individual thing.
Sure. That being said, when it comes to performance or making music, right? In what ways do you personally experience tension between musical form and the aesthetic that you're trying to work with in terms of your music? Of course, there's overwhelming passion, wherein you try to add that touch of yourself in all your musical collaborations or contributions. They tend to weave in and weave out in so many different diverse musical styles. So, could you elaborate a little bit about this particular bit?
Well, there's always variables, and this is the interesting thing about performance. There's always variables. You can spend a lot of time practicing something at your home or in your studio or doing whatever. But once you get into a performance mode,
Mm-hmm.
it's becomes a different animal, because there's so many other variables that can play parts in that, from having butterflies
Yeah.
to errors that can happen, to technical issues, to audience, to things that can throw you off, to sound.
Mm.
Um, so it's a huge gamut of everything, and it's a constant for me. It's a constant learning curve, because it's always in a different situation, and live performance from practice for me is two different, completely different different things. And there's so many other variables, like I said, that play into that. It can really throw you for a loop. So
Yeah.
there's so many different aspects of it that can change constantly. It's kind of like you got to be ready for anything.
Mm.
That's what I think.
When you say you've got to be ready for anything, how do you prepare yourself and get to that point? Like how are you always motivated and prepared for anything?
I've always been an over practicer. I believe in when somebody asks me to do something, if I'm lucky enough to be asked to play some great gigs, I will learn the music 120%. I
Okay.
think that's an important and an easy thing relatively that people can do, and not everybody does that. So
All
I
right.
think that that's an important aspect. Being able to, it's just like any other job. You got to give 100% for it. It's the same thing with my own band. When I would
Mm.
hire people, I would want people to come in who learn the music, who respect the music. That's something that I learned early with Prince, what we call respecting the music, learning the parts, knowing all
Yeah.
the aspects of it. So that gives you the tools to be able to um, be in those conditions where really anything can happen live. Like I said, if you get nervous, if it's a technical issue, if it's a sound issue, or if it's just an amazing performance, or maybe the audience doesn't dig it, or maybe they do, or maybe you play an amazing solo, or maybe you don't. There can be all kinds of different aspects in that. But I think respecting the music, number one, is what you got to do to be able to be prepared
Yeah.
for that. And not everybody does that, which is a drag. There are a few musicians who kind of fly by the seat of their pants and just figure, hey, let me just take the money and go in there because I got the gig and I'll just get by and nobody will notice. But actually we do. It's really a team sport.
Yeah.
Everybody's participation is equally as important. And really you're only as strong as your weakest link,
Yeah.
your weakest
Yeah.
player.
Interesting you mentioned that, in terms of everybody trying to contribute and chip in. I was having this very interesting conversation with Mr. Alfredo Rodriguez yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and he tells me the same, in terms of building a team. It really doesn't matter who you're playing with. It rather depends on how each individual is trying to contribute in the best possible way to make that music and the chemistry reach out to audiences in the best possible way. So I can totally relate to what you said in terms of that.
Definitely, and especially, in
Yeah,
in terms of different types of music call for different types of roles.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
we say about funk music. Funk music, everything has its place.
yeah.
We used to say that if there was five people in the band,
Mm,
uh, there were four musicians, and the fifth one was space.
yeah,
Everything requires something different from the team, which is not necessarily overplaying, and
yeah.
filling up all the roles.
Right, right. On 10th January, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Jeff Beck passed away. And on that morning, what was your first response or your first emotion? I'd like to know the feeling. You've not only performed with him for a long period of time, but beyond the music, you cherish quite a few fond memories with this gentleman. And it was completely unexpected. So, could you take us through what happened?
Well, that was very, 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 very difficult for me. I've spent 13 years playing with Jeff Beck,
Yeah.
and he was part of my family.
Mm.
Very, very close friend. Loved him to death. Just learned so much from him. An amazing guy.
Mm.
Um, the 10th of January didn't affect me as hard as everyone else because I knew during Christmas time that he was ill and that he was in the hospital in a
Yeah.
coma at that time. So my Christmas was pretty bad.
Oh, no.
But that was something that I kept to myself. There was only a very small amount of people, probably count them on one hand,
Yeah.
that knew that he was ill before Christmas,
Yeah.
and that he was dying.
Mm.
Pretty much the prognosis was not good. So the only positive thing for me about that, which was not really positive in any kind of way, but it enabled me to process the fact that he was not going to be around for very long, so that I was hopefully able to deal with it a little bit better emotionally, although it was extremely, extremely difficult. Love
Mm.
Jeff Beck and back. He was just the most amazing man and the most amazing guitar player. But that's what was up with that. I knew that he had been in a coma for a while. They induced a coma for him to try to lessen the damage that
Yeah.
he would
Yeah.
go through for his prognosis. So that's pretty much what happened
Yeah.
with that. So it was tragic. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, still is to this day.
Very
Very.
unfortunate. Very unfortunate indeed. And I'm sure you would have you performed with him for so many years together, and the Indian fans would love to know the top highlight or an anecdote, a very significant anecdote, wherein you shared a lot of camaraderie and a lot of blissful moments on stage with him. Would you be able to recollect a particular anecdote for the audiences in India?
You know what? He was just an incredibly funny guy. He was a lot of fun to be with. And what I loved about Jeff the most is that as a player, not only was he absolutely amazing, but he never really played the same solo
Yeah.
the same.
Mm.
And he soloed more than any other person I knew who
Mm.
would solo in a show.
Yeah.
He was absolutely incredible. And I used to say to him sometimes, sometimes I would have a dressing room next to him, and I would use my phone sometimes, because he would have a tiny little amp in his dressing room, and he would just be by himself warming up or playing, because he would play all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes he would play the most amazing stuff that I could just feel his feel through the wall. And I used to say to him, I don't know if he was a slave in another life reincarnated, or if he was just somebody who had been to a lot of trauma or something. I just couldn't understand where
Yeah.
he got that kind of feel, that to play with that kind of emotion from. He was just an incredible dude.
Mm. Mm.
And I think it's incredible when people are like that, when they find what they're supposed to do in life, like he did. He was
Yeah.
supposed to be he was supposed to be that guitar player, that dude, that guy who wrote those songs, and at 78 years old, still out there
Yeah.
killing on guitar. You know,
Mm. Yeah.
amazing opportunity that was. One of the highlights of my life was playing with this guy, and all the iterations of the different bands that he had that I
Yeah.
was in.
What were the top two takeaways from your stint with him? What is something that you'll carry forward and transmit to the next couple of generations in terms of your time with him?
Number one was a big difference, because I had came from, again, playing on and off, 13 years of Prince before then. So that was a completely different
Yeah.
um, road for me,
Yeah.
coming straight from Canada when I started playing
Yeah.
with Prince. My role in his group, or the kind of band leader that he was completely different. But
Mm.
I'm prefacing that by saying that with Jeff let me do whatever I wanted to do. Jeff trusted who he hired, so he wasn't as heavy-handed. So
Yeah.
that whole experience was really great for me, to be able to change up and do that and trust myself even more, and have that type of freedom
Yeah.
uh, in his bands. That for me was really, really great and enjoyable. The second thing was, it's usually happened throughout my career, but I was treated really, really, really well and
Yeah.
played with some great people at a very, very high level,
Hmm.
and at a very high level of appreciation and respect. And it was all given back. So just the whole team was just great, from the front of house to
Yeah.
to the techs, to the monitor guys, to the stage production managers, to the musicians, to the road managers. Just a great bunch of people to work with.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, all of you put together an amazing tribute to him at the Royal Albert Hall, which included the likes of you, so Eric Clapton, Nathan East, Johnny Depp, and some amazing musicians coming together. Would you like to speak a little bit about that tribute?
It was fantastic, and it was heartbreaking at the same time. It was
Yeah.
closure for some of us, because
Mm.
some of us did go to the private um, ceremony for him, the
Mm.
burial, the service for him. Some of
Yeah.
us were not able to, so um, it was great closure. At the
Yeah.
same time, it was very sad,
Yeah.
again, but I so enjoyed playing with Derek Trucks and
Mm.
John Laughlin, and
Yeah. Yeah.
Ron Woods and Johnny Depp and Billy F. Gibbons, and everybody that was there. Melda May. It was great to see Joss Stone, old
Yeah.
friends too.
Yeah.
So it was great, but it was sad at the same time. It was hard to
Yeah.
throw back the tears. We'd be crying a little bit backstage before we were about to go on, and a little bit when we were going on, especially turning around and looking at the video prompters that had him
Yeah.
on it. It was a very emotional time.
Right. And as I'm having a fanboy moment right now, where can I find a DVD of that? I would love to. I didn't have the privilege to come and watch the tribute concert, but is there a DVD that is likely to come out live at the Royal
That, that
Albert Hall?
that I'm not sure about. Unfortunately, I saw that
Mm.
some people had some bootleg stuff that they
Okay.
shouldn't have put out. But
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's very disrespectful. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that it was filmed,
Mm-hmm.
but that's up to you know Eric Clapton with what he's going to do, and I'm sure
Okay.
Jeff's estate what they would, if they choose to put that out later. Right now, I don't think that there's anything, but it is filmed. It was filmed.
All right. You also did mention Prince, and you've played with him for nearly 14 years. So, what was your perception of Prince as a human being when you met him for the first time?
Ooh, genius, top of his game.
Yeah.
He had slave written on his face when I saw him. Very well put together,
Yeah.
very well dressed. He
Mm.
smelled great. He looked great. He was the man. First time I met him in Paisley Park.
Mm.
That was in 1996.
Wow.
So quite a number of years ago,
Yeah.
when he was just leaving Warner Brothers, and
Mm.
just before he came out with Emancipation.
Mm.
So I was quite taken back, but again, you can't get into fangirl, in those types of situations. You have to get your head together and do what's being asked of you level-headedly if you want to get the gig, you
Yeah.
know.
He did have a tough time, from what I gathered, with his stepfather. And there was a lot of complexity in terms of his relationship that he faced along the years. So, how did you perceive him in the sense of the complexity that and the struggles that he had gone through, the complex human being that he was?
He was
Mm.
very strong in his conviction. Probably used any early pain that he had in his childhood or whatever to be the strong man that he was. He was very strong in his religious convictions, and that brought him a lot of love and a lot of foundation
Yeah.
for where he wanted to go. I think that he probably felt in his younger years that he had been missing that.
Yeah.
He changed a lot of things, you know, turned vegan, changed his religion. He, when he wanted to get something done, he got it done. So, a very smart man
Mm.
and a great teacher. So, I think he did a great job. If he had any headwinds when he was younger, I think that he used them all to his advantage.
Lovely. Lovely. Music has been a long and continuing journey for you, right? So, do you see the path ahead, or does it come for you one step at a time? The whole process of discovery, learning, and growth.
I think it's always different for me, Aditya. Depends on, you know, depends on the day, depends on the month, and how I feel. And music is always in those types of categories for me, also. Just personally, there's times when I feel like writing,
Mm.
and there's times when I don't. There's
Yeah.
times when I feel like getting into bass, and there's times when I don't, to
Yeah.
do other things. So, and there's other things that I like to do in life too. So I mean, it depends. I like a lot of variety also.
Mm.
So I never really do one thing completely all the time, but I go with my heart and spiritually how I feel, and that's the way I truly feel like I can come up with the best result in the end and get the best thing out of what I'm desiring. And when there's certain times when my body or my soul is telling me that I need to say something, whether it's musically through my bass or whether it's a song that I need to write, I listen and I try to comply. You know?
You did mention the word spirituality. I'd like to know, how does spirituality inform your music or your process?
Um, I think in a big way. I think it's part of it. I think that I've been gifted enough to have that gift and that love for it.
Hmm.
And I've always said that, you know, I love playing bass and it's always loved me back. But I think it's a gift too. I think it's something from above. I think that music too is
Yeah.
something from above. It's spiritual, especially when we can create something from nothing
Mm.
and have this beautiful song or a beautiful movement or a beautiful expression. I think it's definitely spiritual. Definitely.
Right.
Has to be.
Right. You've worked with countless number of musicians throughout your career, and as a session player, what are the dimensions that draw you towards a particular project or a collaboration, and you say, "I'm going to take this one up"?
Well, I mean, if it's a singer or somebody that I know who I respect, I mean, of course, I'm there in a minute. You know, again,
Mm.
I love to play bass, even if it's this most simplistic thing. If it sounds great and it's foundational, I get off on that. Um, sometimes if it's people that I don't know who send me stuff, if I like the song, definitely I'm gonna do that. You know, I even when I was younger, from the time that I was young, I tried to go with that little anthem of, you know, I don't try to cut myself off to anything, or I don't say that there's, when people say what kind of music do you play, I say I play everything as long as it's good.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
try not to cut myself off to anything because I think that's a spiritual thing too, and there's something to be learned
Mm.
from everything too that makes you a better player or makes you a better expressor. It's like a potpourri. Life is a potpourri of things that help us express ourselves musically too. So those are some of the things that I look for. But I'll never turn down artists that I respect, or you know, those types of opportunities to learn even more from their music or being able to do collabs for sure.
Right. Speaking of music festivals, I would imagine that there isn't a significant music festival in the world you haven't performed at. So, what is the hallmark or a measure of a well curated festival that you've personally played at?
Hmm. Um, you know, they've all been good. They've all been good, and they've all been different. Um, you know, I guess promotion is great.
Yeah.
And, just our team getting treated well, I think, is the first thing that comes to mind, because the music is what we have to do.
Yeah.
Usually the only differences that will come in there in terms of performances, sometimes on larger things like crossroads or different situations, we'll call it a throw and go, where we play it, but we don't get to sound check at all.
Oh
We just
no.
have to walk out cold, and hopefully there's been a line check done so that our gear works. But if something is down, well, you just got to deal with it. So that's those are kind of the technical differences that I've seen, that on maybe on smaller festivals we'll be able to have a sound check, we'll be able to go onto the stage maybe when there's less people there or something like that, and check it out and work it out. But there's larger ones where you really don't get to do that. So that's kind of what we call fly by the seat of your pants, which is good for you.
Yeah.
Every experience is great, but I've never really played at a bad festival unless there was a lot of rain. That can
Mm.
be a little challenging, but that's nobody's fault. Um, so I'd probably say just being respected and having the stuff we want on backline in terms of food and drink and libations. If the food's good, those two things, and the
Yeah.
ground transportation is good. The rest of it, we just make it happen. We just make it good, no matter what.
Is there a specific festival that you'd like to give a shout out, like a specific name that you'd like to mention in terms of the whole festival experience, which has been great for you as a performer?
I mean, they've all been great. So Crossroads was fantastic. The Isle of Wight was great.
Mm.
There's really been so many over the years, especially with Jeff. There's been tons and tons and tons.
Yeah.
Summer is usually what it's about. Those types
Yeah.
of festivals, the throw and goes. All the ones in Europe have been amazing too. We just came out of that season, so
Yeah.
um, amazing. Done too many. Done too many.
All right.
They've all been good. I don't have any bad ones. That's the good thing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You've been hailed as a performer, and you perform for a living. And I'm sure that you've been doing that because it's been commercially viable for someone like you. And you also seem to make a decent living out of it. So, what is that particular formula that has made this a viable and credible profession for someone like you?
Well, I think number one, like I said, the number one thing for me is respect the music. It's nice to have a reputation where people know if they hire you, they know that this person is going to come in, they're going to know the music,
Yeah.
it's a few simple things that musicians can do that not all of them do,
Mm.
that don't cost any money and really don't take any time.
Yeah.
One is like being on time.
Yeah.
It's an important thing. It's about respecting the music and respecting the people that you're working with, other people's time. Be on time, know the parts, know the music, have equipment that is reliable. A lot of people will think, well, my amp keeps breaking, or looking at the amp, or my guitar is out of tune, or this or that. It's a reflection of what you do. So I think that's also an important thing. Getting along with other people too, being somebody that people want to work with, um, is important also.
Yeah.
That um, and also in terms of business, because it is the music business
Yeah.
first.
Sure.
The business part of it is important, and having an idea of what you can do
Mm-hmm.
with your finances is very important to get you through, I think, the harder times, because our business can be and is like this. There's nothing really guaranteed as a side person
Mm.
in time. When you have your own band, that's a different thing. But when you're a side musician, it's a different thing. So I've taught some courses too on personal finance with music, because I think that also
Wow.
that's
Okay.
something in our industry that's
Yeah.
missing.
Yeah.
Also in our unions, we just don't have that type of representation.
Mm.
Musicians are great. We know that already. They can do anything. We practice. We're phenoms. But unless we're told to do something, we don't necessarily do it, especially when it comes to finances. So
Mm.
sometimes living on a little bit less than what you make, putting things away, Roth IRAs are interesting to do. It depends on how you represent yourself. If you're representing yourself as an individual or
Yeah.
as a corporation, how you're dealing with your taxes, living on a little bit less than what you make, putting stuff away sometimes for when you might have dire times is
Mm.
important, so you can get through that. When you get great tours and big tours, think about maybe, putting some of that away instead of maybe going out and getting a nice Porsche or something that, getting a Tesla,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is great for the moment. But, when something
Yeah.
like COVID comes in, we lost a lot of musicians from COVID
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
quit the business because they either weren't financially prepared or mentally prepared to sit it out for 2 years. Our business got hit the worst, I think, than any other business. And we lost a lot of people who just couldn't come back from that, who just are not um, able to make a living that way anymore because they just weren't ready for it. So a lot of aspects that go into it, but those are things that I live by, and things that I try to teach. But especially those things that don't cost anything, like being on time and learning your parts and taking it seriously. It goes a long way. People remember that stuff. Employers remember that, and people know when you're not pulling your weight. Just like
Yeah.
on any other job.
Correct. As you rightly said, a lot of musicians, I mean, it's been like that for several years now. They focus on technical virtuosity or preparing themselves to like a massive stage, like performing at a massive stage or whatnot. But they barely pay any attention to the finance aspect of it. And I think you've sort of cracked that, in terms of understanding that, like, the need for proper financial planning, right? I feel that's very commendable that you also give that equal weightage along with other aspects, because like in today's generation, because of how competitive it is very key to sort of balance it out in multiple aspects to be a professional individual, like you said. So I feel that is very essential.
I think it's very essential. And like I said before, it's unfortunate that
Yeah.
we haven't got taught that. It
Yeah.
should be, I
Yeah.
think, part of a course at if you go to Berkeley, or if you go to get a music degree. There
Mm.
should be some finance involved in that because it's a big part of the
Yeah.
business. And I
Yeah.
also think it's when you're doing anything artistic and you're doing it because you need the money, it kind of can overshadow what you're really trying to do, the love of it and the spiritual part of it and the whole, yin yang of it. You're not supposed to do stuff for money. And I think that if artists can choose, were able to choose what they would do, not because they needed the money, but because artistically they thought it was amazing, there would be some different results,
Yeah.
especially in writing or whatever. I think in anything, when you have to be forced to do something, you have to do something you don't want to do for money, the output is not as genuine, I think. And
Yeah.
I think that would affect seems like it would affect the arts more, right?
Right. Right. For sure. I agree with you on
Yeah.
that. Many a times, a lot of musicians might have technical challenges. So I'm sure you would have gone through a fair share of that as well. So do you sometimes feel low or disappointed by a technical crew or a fellow musician that you have put enormous work in terms of bringing together, right? In terms of a project or a recording or whatnot, and one evening all of that just seems to fall. Does that happen to you?
Well, I mean, I think there's always projects where you find that somebody's not pulling their weight,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that I was maybe a little bit adversely affected by that from working with Prince for so many years because
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
he was really, really tough on people. Really, really tough. I mean, he
Yeah.
would take it out verbally in front of people, or
Oh no.
just all kinds of things, let you have it. There was no way. And so I think that that kind of affected me when I went into other situations too, where I would just expect everybody to to give 120%, and sometimes not everybody does that. But
Yeah.
then again, there's moments as artists and musicians where we lose faith in what we're doing, at
Mm.
times. Personally, when we would want to do something or something technically, eh, I have to work on something. That's why we practice so much. I can get something technically that's going to throw me off. Or I think too, musicians spend time, and as they should, playing to their fortes, but not to their weaknesses,
Yeah.
and not showing your weaknesses much, playing more to the thing, playing more around the things that you're really good at. And because everybody has weaknesses,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the game is kind of to not show them,
Mm. Mm.
or take the time that you can have to practice the things that you're weaker at, rather than spending the time only practicing on the things that you're really great at. Because sooner or later, you're going to get caught in a situation where you're going to show that you have a flaw, whether it's a style that you don't know, or a technique, or speed, or dexterity, or something that's required of you. So, I mean, it depends on the situations, but yes, I've been in all kinds of situations where I felt that with others also, where it's been one person or something, or sometimes someone in my band, is not doing what I'm expecting, and what I'm expecting of them, as a team player.
Do you see any inadequacies in yourself that you'd like to overcome in the next couple of years?
Um, I wouldn't go as far as call inadequacies, but yeah, I'm only human. Yeah, there's always, like I said, music for me is a black hole of learning, and I say that in a good way because you're never bored with it. There's always something that
Yeah.
you can learn. So yeah, there's always something that I can get better at. Absolutely, and that's what keeps it interesting for me. You know.
Right. How do you channel inspiration into something like songwriting?
How do I channel inspiration? Again, it depends on how I feel, but I go with emotion. It depends on what the inspiration is. Sometimes the inspiration can be losing somebody. Sometimes it can be gaining somebody. It depends, but yeah, writing is a very spiritual thing for me, and I
Okay.
only do it. I only try to do it when I'm really, really in that frame of mind. Um, So yeah, and other people's music can inspire me also. Absolutely. Something really great that I hear can inspire me. A great player can inspire me. Tons of things can inspire me. Absolutely.
All right. You have also learned how to play the upright bass. I mean, this question just popped out of nowhere, but can it be frustrating to play jazz for audiences who primarily know you for your work in, say, pop or the rock realm?
Um, I wouldn't say frustrating, but I think it takes some time.
Hmm.
I have found for me personally that there are fewer bass players that I really dig who play acoustic really, like really, really, really well,
Yeah.
and play electric bass really, really, really well. I mean,
Hmm.
and they do exist. Of course, Stanley Clark is is
Yeah.
is amazing in the classical realm. Christian McBride is amazing. There's a lot of cats who can do it. But again, stylistically, that's a bit of a catch in music, finding people who, like I said before, play different styles of music, but play it well. So it is a different set of marbles. And the acoustic animal is a different animal than
Yeah.
electric.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes I'll have to put time into it to get back into it because it's a different treatment for my hands.
Hmm.
It's a different way of playing, more about technique, especially when it comes to being in tune, playing the instrument in tune,
Yeah.
because there's some frets on it, obviously. So you need to know your fingerings, you need to know all of that. And it's more of a monster. It's harder. The touch is higher.
Yeah.
The strings are higher off the neck. It takes more force to play it than an electric bass, depending on how it's set up. And stylistically, jazz is a different animal. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I like to shed a little bit, definitely myself personally, before I would walk into that realm. I wouldn't just naturally go, yeah, I'm just going to take that gig tomorrow and go with my acoustic if I hadn't played it for a while.
Yeah.
That would be something that I would want to shed on. And when I go out and do it, I've been lucky enough to have the time to be able to shed, even if I take the acoustic on um, on a popular gig
Mm.
or on a rap gig or something that's broken down a little bit more with maybe just drums,
Mm.
um, bass, and keyboards. But yeah, it's different. It's a different animal. But that's the
Yeah.
love of all those different styles. Music is music. It's just a joy. It's just a joy to play, and it gives us such satisfaction when you get into that place when you just go, you know, yeah, it feels good.
Yeah. You put out a very fine music video called Won't Come Back in 2021. So could you take me through the process of making that one?
Yeah, making the video or making the song.
Both, both. Yeah.
The song, I started. I wanted to do a broken love song, but I
Okay.
wanted to hear more fretless bass
Mm-hmm.
in contemporary music because I hadn't heard a lot of that on the radio.
Yeah.
So I got together with my production partner,
Mm-hmm.
very talented guy, Joey Somerville,
Yeah.
out of Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And we got together on this song and banged it around for a while and came up with Won't Come Back. And we kind of achieved what we wanted to. I really loved the song, and then we worked on the video concept, kind of modern, and it was in the middle of COVID, so it was a little bit of a challenge to get it
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
But it was really rewarding. Had Little John Roberts play drums out of Atlanta too,
Mm-hmm.
on the track. Tried to have this track kind of sparse, going a little bit on a play of the modern, what they were doing with modern radio, which what was happening now. And we had a lot of fun and a lot of great reaction from it. Had a great video crew, a great team.
Mm-hmm.
We filmed it in LA
Okay.
in about a day.
Wow.
It was really great. It's still one of my favorites. And have some new music. Working on some new music. Want to come up with a follow up, since I have a little bit more time on my hands right now. But probably with the same production team. I love working with Joey Somerville. So that's basically what it's about. A broken love song about a love that just was great, but it just wasn't meant to last. One of those things that you wanted to, but it just, for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. And had the bass singing. I wanted to solo in my own songs and play the
Yeah.
melody, but not have it be contemporary jazz or smooth jazz. Wanted to go, because that's a little bit more my style. I like to do stuff where I'm singing and playing the bass together, but I don't want to necessarily be labeled as smooth jazz. I wanted to be a little bit more contemporary.
Lovely. In fact, for your new release, we would love to have an Indian premiere on Stalwarts of Music.
I love to do it.
Bring it on. Bring it on. That
And hey, for
can't wait
any
for
of
it.
your for any of your fans and listeners who haven't checked out Won't Come Back, they can definitely find that on my website, rhondasmith.com, or they can also find it on my YouTube channel.
You know what?
Rhonda
I think we should play the song. Let me play a little bit of the song for the Indian audiences out here. Yeah.
Had a love that won't come back. You said you never lied to me. You ride for me. So caught up, I really couldn't say that away. Had a love that won't come back. turned out to be a foe.
So that was Won't Come Back by the one and only Rhonda Smith. And you can check it out on her YouTube channel. Yep.
Yeah, and there's also a remix
Mm-hmm.
that we did
Mm-hmm.
with a rapper called Troy Noika.
Oh, wow.
And there's a video for that too. And that's a different version of the song. And that's also on my YouTube channel or on my website also, rhondasmith.com.
So be sure to check it out. I'd like to get to the most interesting part of our agenda, which is the last part of our agenda, which is the rapid fire. And let's see how you do in terms of the rapid fire, Rhonda. Shall we get started?
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea what it is, but okay, let's give it a try.
All right. So the first question for you, what is that one song that always makes you cry?
Ooh. Okay, that's going to be Miles Davis. And that's the song's called Old Folks.
Great
I think it's
choice.
off on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the contrary, what is your favorite guilty pleasure song?
Guilty pleasures. Well, I don't know if I call it a guilty pleasure. Oh, I have so many. You know what? I love the song Optimistic by The Sounds of Blackness.
Another
It's
great
great,
song.
but I don't know if I call it a guilty pleasure.
All right.
There's no guilt.
If you had to put together an all-star rock or pop band, who'd be in it?
All star. Can they be alive or dead?
Yeah, dead or alive. Yeah.
Rock band. Well, definitely. I'd have two guitar players. I'd probably have Prince and Jeff Beck.
Knew that was coming. Mm-hmm.
Star rock band. Bonham on drums.
Okay.
I'd be playing bass, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe Neil Peart too. Neil Peart
Right.
would be kind of.
Yeah.
Who am I missing? I don't need keyboards necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Could have keyboards. Shoot, I don't know. I'll put Little Richard on keyboards. Do I have to have a singer? Not necessarily. I got to have Jimi Hendrix in there too.
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
on.
What about singer? What about singer? Who would you pick?
Probably the guy from Queen.
Okay. Freddie. Nice.
Crazy band.
Yeah. What is your favorite cuisine?
Italian food.
All right. What are the top 2 qualities of a teacher that you personally embody at this point of time?
Someone who can explain things
Mm-hmm.
easily that are understandable, and someone with patience.
Marvelous. What are the top 5 must-haves in your wardrobe before you push off for a world tour?
Great pair of boots with a heel.
Mm-hmm.
Some cool sunglasses.
All right.
Very cool style black
Mm-hmm.
tight slacks, but they got to have a vibe to them.
Okay.
A nice jacket and definitely a black tee.
Incredible. I have one last question for you. Down in the distant horizon, what would you like to be remembered as?
A good person.
incredible answer for a closure. This interview will be additionally aired on Big FM Shillong and Azol on the Sunday primetime show between 5 to 6 p.m. So it's gonna be a radio experience for the people in the northeastern part of India. And this interview will also be available on my YouTube channel, Aditya Veera 1994, in an audio video format. The live stream will be available and also will be streaming at a later point on all audio platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, name it. So I'll be sure to share the links once they're out. I hope you enjoyed the interview. I hope you had a good time.
I had a great time, Aditya. Thank you so much for having me. And can I give my social media plugs?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, you should.
Yeah. People can find me on Instagram
Mm-hmm.
and this is really easy, at Rhonda Smith Bass.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on TikTok at Rhonda Smith Bass.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Twitter at Rhonda Smith Bass. And Facebook is Rhonda Smith Official. And of course, my website is rhondasmith.com. And check out my YouTube channel, please, for Won't Come Back. 2 different videos. They're killing.
So don't forget to subscribe and show us some love. Thank you so much once again, Rhonda, for making this happen. It's been an incredible blessing, privilege, and an honor. I'd love to stay in touch with you, and I'd love to see you in India. You should come down to India soon.
I can't wait. I hear it's amazing.
Yeah.
Some friends have toured over there, and
Yeah.
everybody has wonderful things to say about it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'd be happy to host you in my country, and if I had to look for music opportunities for you, I'd be happy to do so. So be sure to let me know, and do stay in touch. Thank you so much once again. Take care, and have a nice day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.